Now, there's been an increase in a worrying trend among school children who are recording playground brawls and they're posting them on social media. The Herald Sun has unearthed more than 100 videos posted online in just the last 6 months. Disturbingly, one of these Instagram pages has at least 7,000 followers watching on. Here's some of what we're talking about.
Oh,
leave her alone, bro.
There's plenty more of these sickening videos that are just too graphic to show, including heads getting stomped on and children repeatedly kicked while they're on the ground. Let's bring in our counsellor's couch, child and adolescent psychologist Claire Rowe and psychiatrist Dr Tanveer Ahmed. Good to talk to you both again. Tanveer, tell us about this. Has this always been happening in the school grounds and we're just seeing it now because of mobile phones, or do the phones and social media actually accelerate all this and increase the incidence?
Look, I'd say a bit of both. Now, some of this, some of the real fights, I mean, that's probably always happened, but there is a set of behaviours that have changed due to social media, deviant behaviours. So sometimes they're doing it as pranks. Teens will act out, they'll do crazy stuff. Some of that is being heightened because of social media and they're trying to make it viral. And there's examples. There's one called the Kiki Challenge, where they have to jump out of a car to Drake music, something like this. And people have died doing it, right? But likewise, crime, like even in crime now, certain crimes where people drive into houses and now do a robbery, that's actually so they can film it. So there's an element of deviant behaviour that is going to new extremes because they're trying to get a viral video out of it. So that's where it's changed behaviour.
What's your take on this, Claire? Whether the videos just give us an insight into behaviour or they actually change the behaviour?
Yeah, no, I think they've changed the behaviour. You don't need an IQ test to own a phone and then publicise your life. I mean, and in some ways, yes, as Tanveer said, you have to get more and more extreme as this competitive nature to get likes, to get followers, because that's where your self-worth comes from now. And it's dangerous. And then as another aside, I think that, where are the teachers in this? I think I've been saying for 15 years, there's a lack of discipline in our schools because teachers have actually got their hands tied behind their back in what they can and can't do.
Well, to be fair, a lot of this happens outside school as well, but I agree with your point, absolutely spot on. But tell us also about the physical violence is horrible, but presumably this plays into horrible bullying as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's almost pitched in these Instagram accounts that have all these followers as a sport, and it's that competitive nature. But then, yes, if you're going to treat it like a sport, well, is that just now an excuse to go and beat up the person that you really want to bully?
Well, sometimes it'll be performative, Claire. I think sometimes that it's a performance, right? Obviously, sometimes
you can usually tell from the video whether it's an act or not.
But I think what we'd add there, I think at this age, I think they don't always have a sense of the permanent nature of social media. They don't always have a sense. They've got a sense of the immediate crowd and potentially the performing to that. They don't have a sense, this could be a permanent record in my life and the potential ramifications. That's where
and education won't fix that because developmentally they can keep being told this is on the record, but developmentally they live in the moment. They don't get it.
Oh, no, this frightens me so much. I know your kids are in the teenage mix. My older kids sort of got through it all before social media was big. They dealt with it more as adults.
It's ahead of us.
I've got my the oldest of my two little ones about to turn 12, so he's just coming into this and all his mates have got phones and we're trying to keep them away and, oh, my God, what do you do? Yeah. Now, tell us about how toxic masculinity plays into all of this.
Well, look, I guess this comes with late news this week that there'll be a course to teach healthy masculinity in schools. And look, there's a long history of this and it usually ties into domestic violence debates. More recently we've had consent issues, etc. Now, look, on the face of it, it sounds like, oh, maybe it's a good idea. But this is exactly the type of Trojan horse stuff. It's a bit like the bullying trans stuff that happened a few years ago. And that was pitched as, it's around bullying. But it turned out to be a kind of a radical gender theory. Yeah. So there is a part of me, I haven't looked at the content of this, but it still smells of a radical feminist type drive, potentially. Now, that may have been moderated. Now, it seems to be driven by influencers, Andrew Tate, all this kind of stuff, which most of your viewers have probably heard of. But I think this is potentially a Trojan horse for essentially building self-loathing in boys or feminising boys. Sometimes the term toximillis is just we don't like masculinity. We just don't like traditional masculinity.
This worries me. Masculinity so often gets a bad rap, Claire. There are men doing great and courageous and loving things every day, but we always hear about this toxic masculinity.
Yes, but I think, as I said, we don't know the content, but the idea that we need to teach healthy masculinity is fantastic. Because I think in the past, one of the faults of feminism is that we've tried to be equal to men, and that's been conflated with trying to be the same as men, rather than celebrate feminine and masculine. And I want my son certainly to grow up with this great teaching of healthy masculine energy, because we need good men walking beside women. We need good fathers. And I think a celebration of masculinity, we've got to turn that way. And that's why I like people like Jordan Peterson, actually, who speaks to men. And there's that gap.
Chris, I'd love to ask the question, it's 5-to-1 female teachers in primary schools, likewise in high school. So is there going to be all these female teachers teaching boys going, this is how to be a good man?
That's part of the issue. When you talk about schools and discipline and these issues, we need more men in primary school.
There's no male role models.
Just quickly, because we're nearly out of time, but I want to get a quick sense from each of you about cost of living pressures, because you're dealing with a whole range of people every day. What's your sense of just how tough things are at the moment?
Yeah, look, absolutely. You are seeing more and more of that, and that playing out more in relationships, all these other things, just day-to-day human stuff. It's just adding this extra pressure, and people are pulling back. But I do want to speak to this, because I notice more and more pressure on the Reserve Bank, as if they have to almost think about social policy. I just don't think that's their role.
Their role is
people say, they need to watch out about it, to bring down interest rates. Their role is to think all these long-term, all these bigger markers.
Yep, exactly.
I've got colleagues saying, the Reserve Bank shouldn't be doing this, it's going to hurt jobs, etc. That is not their role. It's the government's role to do social policy.
Yeah.
It's the Reserve Bank's role to look at all these big macro trends and make decisions.
Spot on, and likely another interest rate soon.
I think so, definitely before Christmas. And I think, as Tanveer said, that's because, productivity is low, unemployment's low, and at the end of the day, inflation's still too high. That's not their role to be able to cushion that. But I'm seeing, as a healthcare provider, discretionary spending has been slashed. Healthcare is now being slashed by people. They're not attending our office because they can't afford it.
So worry creates more problems. Thanks so much for joining us again, Claire Rowe and Tanveer Ahmed. We'll catch up again next week.